Welcome to the pod, everyone. Today, we are breaking down the absolute spectacle that was the Africa Cup of Nations final. We are talking about the Alassane Ouattara Stadium in Abidjan, packed with 60,000 screaming fans, an ocean of orange, green, and white. For athletes and fans alike, this wasn't just a game. It was a masterclass in high-stakes performance. The energy was electric, and mistakes couldn't have been higher as Ivory Coast faced off against Nigeria. We are going to dive deep into the tactical nuances, the physical demands of the tournament, and the sheer grit it takes to reach the summit of African football. Get ready for a technical breakdown of a final that truly redefined the continent's sporting landscape.
Let's talk about Nigeria's road to the final. For any defensive coach out there, this was a clinic. The Super Eagles went into the final boasting an incredible record of 5 clean sheets throughout the tournament. Coach Jose Peseiro implemented a rigid, disciplined structure that frustrated the best attackers on the continent. They weren't just lucky, they were tactically sound, utilizing a low block that invited pressure only to snap into aggressive interceptions. For fitness enthusiasts, notice the lateral quickness required by their wingbacks to maintain this shape for 90-plus minutes. Nigeria's defensive efficiency was the bedrock of their campaign, proving that championships are often built from the back forward, even when the offensive stars grab the headlines.
Now, if you want to talk about mental toughness, look no further than Ivory Coast. This team was essentially out of the tournament during the group stages after a crushing 4-0 loss to Equatorial Guinea. But as athletes, we know it's not how you start, it's how you finish. They sacked their coach mid-tournament and somehow found the resolve to push through. By the time they reached the final, they had the momentum of a freight train. Their 1-0 win over DR Congo in the semifinals set the stage for a historic comeback. It is a lesson for any competitor. Resilience is a muscle. The Elephants didn't just play for a trophy, they played for redemption, and that psychological shift was visible in every 50-50 challenge they won.
Let's get into the X's and O's. Nigeria stuck with their reliable 3-4-3 formation, aiming to clog the midfield and exploit the pace of Victor Osimhen on the break. On the other side, Ivory Coast utilized a more traditional but fluid 4-3-3, emphasizing width and overlapping runs from their fullbacks. This tactical clash was fascinating. The 3-4-3 allowed Nigeria to have numerical superiority in defense, but it put an immense physical load on their wingbacks, who had to cover nearly 11 kilometers each. Ivory Coast's midfield, led by Seri and Kessié, worked to bypass the central congestion by switching play rapidly. For the fans watching closely, the game was won and lost in those transition moments where one system stretched the other to its breaking point.
The physicality of the AFCON final is always on another level. We saw average sprint speeds hitting 32 kilometers per hour despite the stifling humidity. In the heart of the pitch, Seko Fofana and Franck Kessié were absolute engines for Ivory Coast. They weren't just winning balls, they were driving the transition from defense to attack with explosive power. For fitness enthusiasts, look at the body composition and conditioning of these players. We're talking about elite-level anaerobic threshold capacity. They were maintaining high-intensity sprints well into the 80th minute. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of who had the superior aerobic base to survive the grueling African heat and the intensity of a continental final. The physicality of the AFCON final is always on another level. We saw average sprint speeds hitting 32 kilometers per hour despite the stifling humidity. In the heart of the pitch, Seko Fofana and Franck Kessié were absolute engines for Ivory Coast. They weren't just winning balls, they were driving the transition from defense to attack with explosive power. For fitness enthusiasts, look at the body composition and conditioning of these players. We're talking about elite-level anaerobic threshold capacity. They were maintaining high-intensity sprints well into the 80th minute. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of who had the superior aerobic base to survive the grueling African heat and the intensity of a continental final. You cannot analyze this game without talking about the climate. Temperatures were hovering around 30 degrees Celsius with 80% humidity. From a performance science perspective, hydration and electrolyte management were the silent MVPs. Both teams utilized cooling breaks and specialized recovery protocols to prevent cramping. You saw players taking on specific glucose and electrolyte mixes during every stoppage. For athletes, this is a reminder that your output is only as good as your fuel. The Ivorian medical staff clearly did their homework, as the team seemed to have a second wind in the final 15 minutes. Managing core body temperature in these conditions is the difference between a gold medal and a silver one, and the science behind the scenes was world-class.
The psychological pressure of playing a final at home is immense. We saw it in the body language of the Ivorian players early on, a bit of tension, some unforced errors, but the crowd of 60,000 Orange Cloud supporters acted as a 12th man. For sports fans, this is the home field advantage quantified. The noise levels peaked at over 110 decibels when the final whistle blew. Managing that cortisol spike and staying focused on the tactical plan is what separates elite athletes from the rest. Ivory Coast didn't crumble under the weight of a nation's expectations. They used that energy to fuel their late-game press. It was a masterclass in emotional regulation and leveraging environmental factors to secure a historic third continental title.
As we wrap up this analysis, let's look at the bigger picture. This AFCON reached over 2 billion viewers globally. The quality of play, the tactical sophistication, and the sheer athleticism on display prove that African football is in a golden age. For our athletes and fitness buffs listening, let this tournament be an inspiration. The level of preparation, from the 32-kilometer-per-hour sprints to the 90-minute tactical discipline, shows that the gap in global football is closing. Ivory Coast are the champions, but the real winner is the sport itself. We've seen heroes born and legends solidified. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into the 2024 AFCON final. Keep training, keep watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Host out.